I want you to picture two people in your mind right now. Rosa Parks and the biblical figure Moses.
Okay, that is quite the unexpected pairing.
Right. I mean, what could those two possibly have in common?
Well, most people wouldn't guess it, but they were both profound introverts.
Exactly. There are people who completely change the world, but they do it through quiet strength, not loud charisma.
Yeah, they really did.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking a huge stack of source material, mainly centered around Susan Cain's amazing book, Quiet.
Such a good book.
It really is. And our mission today is to completely dismantle this thing called the extrovert ideal.
Right, which is basically that omnipresent societal belief that the ideal self is, gregarious alpha constantly talking.
Yeah, just perfectly comfortable, bathed in the spotlight all the time.
Exactly.
We're going to get fundamentally into the psychology, the history, and even the deep neuroscience of why society is structured this way.
And we're going to uncover the hidden superpowers of introversion.
But to set the baseline here, we probably need to define our terms, right?
Yeah, because our common definition of introversion is often completely wrong.
People just equate it with being antisocial or shy.
Right, but if you look back at Carl Jung, he's the influential psychologist who popularized these terms back in the 1920s.
Yeah.
He framed it entirely around energy. Introverts are drawn to the inner world of thought and feeling.
Okay.
So they literally have to recharge their cognitive batteries by stepping away from stimulation.
Like going to a quiet room after a party.
Exactly. Whereas extroverts, they plunge into external events. They actually require the friction of socializing and high-stakes environments to charge themselves up.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that raises a massive question for you, the listener.
It really does.
Because the data suggests that, depending on the study, like 1/3 to 1/2 of the population leans introverted.
Yeah, which is huge. That's 1 out of every 2 or 3 people you know.
Right. So if nearly half the world operates this way, why does the modern world feel like it was built exclusively for extroverts?
To understand that, we actually have to look backward. We have to look at this massive historical transition that occurred right at the turn of the 20th century.
What happened then?
Well, cultural historians define it as the shift from the culture of character to the culture of personality.
Okay, what did the culture of character actually look like in practice? Like, how did people live?
So if you look at the 19th century, particularly in America, society was largely agricultural.
Right.
You lived in a small town. You worked alongside people who had known your family for generations.
So everyone knew everyone.
Exactly. And because of that, you were judged by your private virtues. Were you honest? Were you disciplined? Honorable?
Think of someone like Abraham Lincoln, right?
Perfect example. He was revered for his deep modesty and his quiet reserve.
Because what counted was the substance of how you behaved in private, since your community already knew exactly who you were.
Exactly. But then we hit the 20th century, and the entire socioeconomic landscape just gets violently shaken up.
Right, you have the explosion of industrialization.
Mass urbanization, a huge wave of immigration.
So suddenly, millions of people are leaving those tight-knit agricultural communities and pouring into these massive, anonymous big cities.
And that changes the fundamental currency of human interaction.
Yeah.
You're no longer working with your neighbors.
Right.
Citizens basically morphed into employees. For the first time in history, you had to constantly sell yourself to absolute strangers.
Wow. Whether it was a job interview, a sales pitch, or just trying to find a social circle in a city of millions.
Yeah, it completely flipped the script.
It's kind of like society traded in a really sturdy, reliable pair of boots for a pair of flashy neon sneakers.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, like suddenly it wasn't about how far you could walk, but how good you looked standing still.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And the person who recognized this shift faster than anyone else was Dale Carnegie.
Oh, the how to win friends and influence people guy.
The very same.
Hmm.
He actually grew up as a skinny, insecure farm boy in Missouri who was completely terrified of public speaking.
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah. But as he watched this new corporate America taking shape, he realized that the ability to speak fluidly and command a room was becoming the ultimate weapon for survival.
So he just transformed himself.
He did. He moved to New York and started teaching businessmen not how to be better at their actual jobs, but how to project confidence, charm, and magnetism.
And of course, Madison Avenue jumped right in to monetize the anxiety this caused.
Oh, absolutely did.
If you look at the advertising industry of the 1920s, they started aggressively playing on these new social fears.
Yeah, there's this famous print ad for Woodbury soap?
Oh, I saw that in the source material. It explicitly warned women, critical eyes are sizing you up right now.
Right. The message was just so clear. Being a good person is no longer enough. You have to be a magnetic performer.
Which is so much pressure.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological fallout of that shift was profound.
How so?
It actually birthed a brand new psychological concept in the 1920s, the inferiority complex.
Oh, coined by Alfred Adler, right.
Exactly. Before this era, being a quiet, contemplative person was seen as a mark of good breeding or intellectual depth.
But after this shift,
Shyness was completely pathologized. The psychiatric community literally began treating introversion as a disease that needed to be cured.
that is wild.
Parents were suddenly terrified if their children wanted to stay in their rooms and read a book instead of constantly socializing.
I read that by the mid-century, universities were actively trying to weed out what they called brilliant introverts in favor of healthy extroverts.
Yeah, which completely distorted our definition of what makes a good leader.
Right, because society became obsessed with personality, we started falsely equating volume with competence.
We just assume the loudest person in the room is the smartest person in the room.
And you see the absolute peak of this if you look at modern self-help and business seminars. Take Tony Robbins.
Oh yeah, his Unleash the Power Within seminar.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the culture of personality.
It really is.
You walk into this massive convention hall, they keep the temperature at 50 degrees, so you literally cannot fall asleep.
Which is intense.
Super intense. Loud Billy Idol music is blasting. Thousands of people are jumping on folding chairs.
And the core philosophy being taught is that to be successful, you have to exude this hyper-aggressive, extroverted energy.
Right. At one point, attendees are practicing shaking hands, and they are told that if they don't dominate that interaction and sell themselves in the first 3 seconds, everyone they care about will die like pigs in hell.
It's basically saying extroverted salesmanship is a supreme moral virtue.
It's crazy, but you see that same prioritization of aggressive confidence at the highest levels of academia, too.
Definitely. Look at the curriculum at Harvard Business School.
Yeah, their primary teaching model is the case method.
Right. Students are given a complex business scenario, and their grade is heavily dependent on how forcefully and confidently they can hold forth on the subject in front of their peers.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on that for a second.
Go for it.
In those case studies, they often don't have all the financial data or market research they would actually need to make a responsible decision, right?
Right.
So if they don't have the information, why are they being rewarded for speaking with absolute conviction? That sounds like a recipe for corporate disaster.
It absolutely is, but the environment prioritizes decisiveness over accuracy.
Wow.
The underlying assumption is that a leader must always appear to be in command, even when they're just guessing.
But does that actually work in the real world?
Well, Adam Grant, a really brilliant management professor, researched the fallout of this exact dynamic.
Because he wanted to know if these extroverted, highly vocal leaders actually produce better financial results, right?
Exactly.
Mm.
And the data showed a very specific split.
What was it?
Extroverted leaders do excel when they are managing passive workers
Okay.
because they have that natural energy to inspire and push a sluggish team forward.
Makes sense.
But introverted leaders actually perform significantly better when they are managing proactive employees.
Wait, why the difference? If the team is proactive, shouldn't a charismatic leader just amplify that energy?
You would think so, but the mechanism is entirely different. Introverted leaders actually listen. Because their ego isn't tied to being the center of attention, they aren't obsessed with putting their own stamp on every single idea.
Right, so if a proactive employee comes up with a more efficient supply chain route, the introverted leader hears it, validates it, and implements it.
Exactly. The highly extroverted leader, on the other hand, is often so busy talking and projecting their own vision that the employee's good idea just gets drowned out.
And eventually, those proactive employees realize their input doesn't matter, they stop trying, and they become passive.
Yep.
But, let me play devil's advocate here. Doesn't a CEO have to be loud to rally the troops?
Right, the old stereotype.
Yeah. We have this deeply ingrained image of the table-pounding executive who turns a failing company around through sheer force of will.
What's fascinating here is that the historical data completely contradicts that stereotype.
Really?
Yeah. Management theorist Jim Collins conducted this exhaustive study to find out what the highest performing companies of the late 20th century actually had in common.
The good to great companies.
Exactly. Organizations that crushed their competitors over a long period. And he found that every single one of these companies was led by what he termed a level 5 leader.
And I'm guessing these were not the flashy magazine cover CEOs.
Far from it. Take Darwin Smith, who turned Kimberly-Clark from a struggling paper mill into the leading consumer paper company in the world.
What was he like?
He was quiet, nerdy, wore off-the-rack JCPenney suits, and spent his vacations working alone on his farm.
Wow.
These transformational leaders were intensely modest and self-effacing. Their ambition was channeled entirely into the institution they were building, not into their own personal celebrity.
But because society still buys into the myth of the charismatic savior, we just empower the loudest voice anyway, often to our own ruin.
Oh, totally.
There's this famous simulation game played at business schools called the subarctic survival situation,
Oh, I know this one.
right? Students are grouped together and have to rank a list of salvaged items after a simulated plane crash in the tundra.
Mm-hmm.
And in one recorded instance of this game, there was a quiet participant who actually had extensive real-world experience in the northern backwoods.
So he actually knew what to do.
Yes, he knew exactly what items were needed to survive, but the group completely ignored him.
Let me guess, because he wasn't loud enough.
Exactly. Because he didn't speak with enough booming conviction, they happily followed the most vocal, confident people in the group straight into a simulated disaster. Or there's also the bus to Abilene phenomenon, where groups just follow the loudest voice into doing something nobody actually wants to do.
Right, which points to a massive structural flaw in how we design our institutions.
For sure.
Because if loud leadership is a myth, then the physical spaces we've built to encourage constant loud interaction are the next domino that needs to fall.
Oh, you were talking about the new groupthink.
Yes.
This idea has completely taken over modern life. We see it in elementary schools where desks are no longer arranged in rows.
They're pushed together into pods.
Right, so children are forced into constant cooperative learning, and then those kids graduate and go into corporate open-plan offices without walls.
Where everyone is forced to collaborate and cross-pollinate ideas constantly.
It is all built on the completely unproven premise that creativity is a gregarious team sport.
And the science of exceptional achievement says the exact opposite.
Okay, tell me about the science.
Well, psychologist Anders Ericsson studied elite violinists at the Music Academy in West Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to uncover the specific variable that separated the world-class soloists from the musicians who were just, good.
What was...
It wasn't the total hours spent playing music. The defining metric was the number of hours spent practicing in absolute, uninterrupted solitude.
Because of what he called deliberate practice.
Correct. To achieve true cognitive mastery, you have to identify the specific micro-task that is just out of your reach, and you have to aggressively focus your mind on mastering it.
And you just cannot do that in a group.
No, a group naturally regresses to the mean.
Which perfectly explains why Steve Wozniak didn't invent the Apple computer in some noisy ping-pong table-filled corporate brainstorming session.
Right.
He built it entirely alone, sitting inside his cubicle at Hewlett-Packard, working at 6:30 in the morning before anyone else even arrived at the building.
And his explicit advice to aspiring inventors is literally work alone.
But yet, corporate America remains obsessed with group brainstorming.
It's wild. The concept was actually invented in the 1940s by an advertising executive named Alex Osborne.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He claimed that if you put people in a room and freed them from criticism, they would produce an endless fountain of creative ideas.
I mean, it sounds nice.
It caught on because it feels productive. But 40 years of rigorous psychological research proves it actually decreases productivity.
So what does this all mean? Why does it fail so spectacularly?
A landmark study by Marvin Dennett involving 3M executives and scientists showed conclusively that individuals working alone produced more ideas and vastly higher quality ideas than groups did.
Wow.
The mechanics of group brainstorming are fundamentally flawed. You have social loafing, where people unconsciously put in less effort because they are in a group.
Right.
You have production blocking, because only one person can talk at a time, so other people forget their ideas while waiting. And most importantly, you have evaluation apprehension, the paralyzing fear of looking stupid in front of your peers.
It's basically like trying to paint a masterpiece while 5 other people are continuously grabbing your paintbrush.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Or like trying to run a heavy video rendering software on your computer while you have 50 different browser tabs open.
Yeah.
Your brain is a processor.
Yes.
If it is dedicating massive amounts of RAM to processing the social dynamics of the room, reading facial expressions, and worrying about being judged, there is simply no processing power left for actual deep creativity.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it.
Yeah.
And the neuroscience behind that social processing is actually quite chilling.
Chilling. How so?
So a neuroscientist named Gregory Burns used modern fMRI scanners to update the famous Asch conformity experiments.
Okay, remind me, the original Ash study was the one in the 1950s with the lines, right?
Yes.
Where people were shown lines of different lengths, and actors planted in the room confidently gave the wrong answer about which line was longest.
That's the one. In that original study, a staggering 75% of the real participants ultimately caved and agreed with the group's obviously wrong answer.
Wow.
For decades, psychologists assumed this was just a conscious social choice. People knew the group was wrong, but they lied just to fit in.
But the fMRI scans showed something completely different.
Entirely different. Burns put participants into the scanner while they performed a modern visual rotation task, subjecting them to the same kind of peer pressure.
And what happened in their brains?
When the participants conformed to the group's wrong answer, their brain activity did not spike in the frontal cortex, which is the area responsible for conscious decision-making and lying.
Where did it spike?
In the occipital and parietal lobes, the areas associated with visual and spatial perception.
Wait, I want to make sure the listener really grasps the weight of this. Are you saying the peer pressure didn't make them lie? It actually altered what their eyes were physically seeing?
Yes, the group dynamic literally overrode their brain's perception of physical reality.
That is mind-blowing.
The subconscious desire to belong is so strong, it can change your visual processing.
Wow.
Furthermore, when participants did manage to stand their ground and dissent against the group, their amygdala lit up like a Christmas tree.
And the amygdala is the primitive organ associated with fear, right?
Exactly. Fear of rejection and physical danger. Burns calls it the pain of independence. From a biological standpoint, standing alone and defying the group actually hurts.
But if standing alone is neurologically painful, and if groupthink is a creativity killer, why do introverts and extroverts crave such completely different environments?
Good question.
I mean, it turns out this isn't just a social preference. We have to transition from sociology into hard biology here because it is literally in our DNA.
Absolutely. And the clearest window into this is a famous longitudinal study by the developmental psychologist Jerome Kagan.
Oh, the infant study.
Right. He brought 500 4-month-old infants into his lab and exposed them to a series of novel experiences.
Like what?
He played tape-recorded voices, popped balloons, and waved cotton swabs dipped in alcohol under their noses.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because Kagan's hypothesis going into this was completely counterintuitive to what a normal person would think.
It really was.
About 20% of the babies cried lustily, pumped their arms and legs, and completely lost their minds at the popping balloons.
He called them high reactive.
Right. And then about 40% stayed perfectly quiet and placid, moving very little. He called them low reactive. And Kagan predicted that the loud, thrashing babies would actually grow up to be the quiet, introverted teens.
Which seems completely backward.
So backward.
But the thrashing wasn't an extroverted personality displaying itself. It was a mechanism of the nervous system.
Okay, explain that.
Those thrashing babies had a highly sensitive amygdala. Like we said, the amygdala acts as the brain's emotional switchboard.
Right.
When the balloons popped, their switchboard was instantly overwhelmed by the flood of new stimuli.
Oh, I see.
As they grew up, that highly tuned nervous system made them incredibly vigilant and cautious in complex environments, like a loud cocktail party or a chaotic open-plan office.
So introversion isn't about disliking people. It's about having a nervous system that processes environmental data at a much higher, more sensitive frequency. That's exactly.
And the calm babies.
The calm babies had amygdalae that were basically unmoved by novelty. They needed a massive amount of external stimulation just to feel anything.
So they grew up to be the extroverts who actively seek out the thrill of large crowds, loud music, and high-risk environments.
Exactly.
And this biological sensitivity ties perfectly into what childcare expert Jay Bilski calls the orchid hypothesis.
Right, which is such a beautiful way to frame it.
It is. This is the theory that these high-reactive kids are like orchids. If you put an orchid in a harsh, highly stressful environment, it wilts terribly.
Mm-hmm.
High reactive kids in bad environments are highly vulnerable to anxiety and depression.
But if you plant that same orchid in a highly supportive, nurturing greenhouse.
It doesn't just survive, it blooms spectacularly,
Yeah.
often outperforming the hardier flowers.
And the biological evidence for this is fascinating. Scientist Stephen Swomey studied this phenomenon in rhesus monkeys.
Who share about 95% of our DNA.
Right. He specifically looked at monkeys with a variation of the SERT gene. Okay, what does the SERT gene actually do in the brain?
It regulates the transport of serotonin, which profoundly affects mood and anxiety.
Okay.
Monkeys and humans with a specific variation of this gene have a nervous system that is highly porous. They deeply absorb their environment.
So what did Swomey find?
He found that when these highly reactive monkeys were raised as orphans under high stress, they struggled severely with anxiety.
Makes sense.
But when monkeys with that exact same genetic profile were raised by highly nurturing mothers, they actually outperformed the monkeys without the gene.
Wow. Outperformed how?
They showed better social skills, handled troop conflicts better, and often became the leaders.
Because their highly sensitive nervous system allowed them to read the nuanced social dynamics of the troop better than anyone else.
Exactly.
But I mean, hearing all this incredibly deterministic biology, I have to ask a crucial question on behalf of the listener. Does this mean my temperament is a life sentence? If I'm born high reactive with this highly sensitive amygdala and a porous nervous system, am I just doomed to be terrified of public speaking and overwhelmed by open offices forever?
This raises an important question, and the answer lies in the architecture of the brain. We have free will, but it operates within a biological framework.
Okay.
Psychologists refer to this as the rubber band theory of personality.
Rubber band theory, I like that.
Dr. Carl Schwartz, who was actually a protege of Cain, tracked down those exact same high reactive children and put them into an fMRI scanner when they became adults.
And what did he see?
When he showed them pictures of unfamiliar faces, the amygdala of those high reactive adults still lit up. The biological footprint of their sensitivity never disappeared.
So the initial fear response is still firing in the background?
Yes, but here is the critical mechanism. The prefrontal cortex, the conscious, highly evolved decision-making part of the brain, can soothe the amygdala. You can consciously regulate your nervous system. You can stretch your rubber band to perform socially, to give a dynamic keynote speech, or to lead a massive corporate meeting.
But just like a physical rubber band, you cannot stay stretched forever.
Right. You must eventually return to your resting state to recover.
You have to find a way to snap back.
Precisely. Hans Eysenck demonstrated this physical reality beautifully with his famous lemon juice experiment.
Oh, the lemon juice experiment.
Yeah, he placed drops of lemon juice on the tongues of introverts and extroverts. The introverts salivated significantly more.
Because their reticular activating system is simply more wide open to sensory stimuli.
Exactly. Every single human being has a biological sweet spot of optimal arousal.
Right. Extroverts require high wattage activities to reach their sweet spot, otherwise they feel lethargic and understimulated.
And introverts require lower wattage activities, a quiet conversation, a deep book, a solitary walk to reach theirs, otherwise they become overwhelmed and exhausted.
So bringing this all together for you, the listener, we have completely dismantled the extrovert ideal today.
We really have.
We've seen how the historical shift from character to personality convinced us that we needed to be flashy performers. We've seen how rewarding loud leadership often leads us straight into disaster.
Yep.
And we've seen how true cognitive mastery and creativity require the deep solitude of a Steve Wozniak, not a chaotic group brainstorming session.
Absolutely.
Whether you are an extrovert who thrives on the noise or a highly sensitive orchid who needs the quiet, understanding your biological sweet spot gives you incredible leverage.
It really does. It gives you the power to consciously organize your life.
Right, to advocate for a better workspace and to manage your relationships for maximum energy.
You aren't broken and you don't need to be cured.
Exactly. You just need to engineer your environment to match your nervous system.
And I want to leave you with one final thought to explore on your own. Think about the digital spaces you inhabit every single day. If you look at the early internet, it was built primarily by introverted engineers as a sanctuary for quiet, asynchronous connection.
Right. It was a space where you could process information and think deeply before you responded.
Exactly. Yet today, the algorithms driving social media have morphed it into the ultimate terrifying stage for the extrovert ideal.
Oh, absolutely.
It is an environment that demands constant synchronous performance, loud opinions, and public metrics of likability.
It's essentially a virtual Tony Robbins seminar playing out in your pocket 24/7.
That is exactly what it is. So the question to ask yourself tomorrow morning is,
Right.
are you using your technology as a tool to find your restorative sweet spot? Or are you unknowingly stepping out onto that exhausting high-wattage stage every single time you unlock your phone?
That is quite the question to leave on. And as you ponder that, remember the quiet figures of history. Remember Rosa Parks calmly refusing to move on that bus in Montgomery, or Moses terrified of public speaking but leading a nation anyway.
Mhm.
The loudest voice in the room is rarely the one that changes the world. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can possibly be is quiet.